Hey everybody. So my camera's still doing its weird thing, so I'll probably turn it off because it is a bit of a distraction. But it is March 9th, Sunday, beautiful day here. It rained all through the night, and that was crazy. And then now it's all nice and dry out there, because it was super windy yesterday, and things sort of dry out very quickly here. And I live next to a creek, so the water drains out pretty quick. If it's not all waterlogged. I'm going to turn off my camera because I do think that is a bit of a distraction. But So here we are. So yesterday, I've been using unit tests, and it was I'm not like a big proponent of unit tests. Like that's not something that I'm really big into, but I definitely have like sort of mixed feelings about unit tests in general. But I did have always thought, and there was a one point in time where I really thought unit tests were absolutely critical, and that was before TypeScript. So before TypeScript, you might do an upgrade of a library, and they might change the arguments and change sort of the way things would work, and then you would never even get any indication, and it could literally take years before an error would present itself, and then or before you discover errors and stuff like that. And then TypeScript came along, and those sort of basic things are just automatically caught by when it's compiled or transpiled into JavaScript. So then my sort of like I adapted. It's like, okay, I don't know that unit tests are worth it anymore. But one thing I do like about unit tests are that they sort of force you to they strongly encourage you to write code in a certain way that is a little bit more like pure, right? It's just so much easier to write a unit test around a function that handles everything internally and doesn't depend on the state. It just like is a sort of adds friction to sort of like it's okay to go off of the state and stuff, but like things can get out of hand pretty quickly. It's very, sometimes you just have to go off the state. Like, for example, in this line on 34, I'm kind of going off the state, and there's really not much I could do. I'm just saying, hey, unless the actual DOM element exists, don't render this, right? I mean, that's what I'm saying there. Anyways, so that's that. I think all of this code should go should be handled in a function in my visualization service, and then my visualization service should return a true or false, and I'm not even going to respond to the true or false at this point. Maybe I want to do something in the visualization service when it fails, maybe not, but that is a bridge that I want to cross in the future, and I definitely don't. And I want to set myself up for success when that time comes. I don't want to have to do a big refactor to get true or false based on whether it, it works. So, anyways, over here, I want to create a function, and that function is basically just a utility function. And I think all it does is everything that's in here. So this thing basically gets a renderer based on the ID that's passed into it. It gets an ST renderer. It sets the size of the rendering, like basically the SVG that's going to get generated, and then it's attaches that to the DOM element, and then um, and then so I guess I need to pass in the renderer child. Yeah, I guess I need to pass in the renderer child, and then it renders it. It basically tells ThreeJS to draw what's what's in there. So I think that all of that could go into a function, and maybe um, this thing should be like, uh, you know, render render in native element. I don't know. That sounds like a good name. I a lot of people say that that is the most difficult thing in all of programming, is thinking of um, a name. And so this is a service that is specifically locked in, tied to a component. It's just basically a component's utility service, but it's for this component. Render in native element. And it's going to return a Boolean. And so success. It's false. Return success. And at this point, I don't even plan to use this. Okay, and it's going to get two things. It's going to get a native element. And that is of type. I don't remember off the top of my head. This thing here, whatever this is. Element ref, any native element, any. I don't really like this, and it's more like just triggering because I had a job where they. That's weird. Okay, so my little trick that I try to do that sometimes gets me out of this conundrum I'm in, const a string is equal to, I cannot even tell you, like I had this job with the federal, like as a contractor for the federal government, and they always demanded that you strongly type everything. And I've spent so many hours doing this. Okay, so that sucks. So I was hoping that this would tell me that this was wrong, and it will tell me. So is element ref any? See, it's saying that native element is that. So like, since, so this is a DOM element, right? Native element is a DOM element. And I don't, let's see, I'm a little bit, okay, so maybe I should give it the whole element ref. At least give me some chance. But I believe that this is my element ref. Okay, so I'm just going to take the whole element ref over there. There's probably a better way. Like I would love to just send the DOM element over, but I just don't know how to do that. And I'm just going to call this element ref. And I believe element ref comes from core, but I'm not 100% sure on that. Let's see what it offers. Import Angular from element core. So I'm going to get an element ref. I'm assuming that ref is for reference. And then I'm also going to get what's the other thing I'm going to get? I'm going to get an ID, which is a number. And it's an STID. And I have found that adding that STID actually helps me reduce in confusion. So that's for space and time ID, which is a number. All right, and what this thing will have is it will have will have basic. It needs both of these. It needs both of these services, and these are singleton services that are shared, and all of that is managed by the injector. So, um, and then basically we need to import these, and we kind of should pay attention. Yeah, so that looks good. And then my st render service, that looks good. And let's go ahead and add a space in between up here, so we can sort of separate out our stuff. And then inject comes from, and it's lowercase inject. I'm curious where it's going to put it up there. It should come from the core. It may try to get it from the test. Yeah, so from testing. So like sometimes your IDE will be set up to just to automatically import these things, and many times it'll import it from the Angular core testing instead of Angular core. You do not want the testing injector. You want the regular one. I don't really know what the exact difference between the two of them are. That would be actually very interesting to dig into at some point. So anyway, so now basically what I have is a copy of the existing render service, and this, since there's nothing in front of it, I sort of went with it's the ThreeJS. So basically this is the thing that interacts directly with ThreeJS, and this is the thing that sort of interacts with the reality that I've defined on how to describe one of these objects. So basically, I don't even think now, well, okay, so now I want to create this function, and this function should be able to just do exactly, I think I can just lift and shift all of this stuff. I don't need this anymore. So the only thing this component needs to know is when the native element is available, because there are timing issues. So basically what will happen is these elements get rendered on the screen, and right now it's working at ng after view init. Now I have had plenty of experiences where a upgrade, like you do an upgrade, like none of these, when this element is going to be created can change. And there's kind of two effects. One is sometimes I've had where elements get moved into another child, another component. And in that case, sometimes it's not available yet, and you have to use a different hook, a different lifecycle hook in order to run. And then sometimes you get to sometimes an upgrade will just change the way. Sometimes you may decide to use like a third party thing, and this timing can change. So really the only logic I really truly want in this component, and this was sort of exposed to me by the unit test, but the only thing I really want in this component is the logic of when is this native element available. That's it. When are we ready to roll? When we're ready to roll, then use the logic from our visualization, which we are not. Man, now I'm a little bit. So that visualization, well, I may end up regretting this name of this thing, but so I believe this is going to be called visualization. And this is actually, I don't really regret this name. I'm starting to regret the name of the ThreeJS, because now I'm like, well, there's no ST in front of it, so it must be ThreeJS, and it's not. It's my components. Let's see how we named this bad boy. Did I? Okay, I did not paste this over here, so let me paste this over here. And then I'll add logic that says, I don't know what I'm going to add, But for now, I'm going to leave this here. And of course, now we're on this. And this, it won't do this by itself, which is kind of a shame. Um, so let's do this. Now I'm like, import star as 3 from, I like being able to do something like this from memory. It just is good exercise for the brain. Why is strender? Oh, okay, it doesn't know what an strender is. And that's going to come from our interfaces. And then what's next? This strender ID is actually now stid. So that was coming from the signal, but now it's coming from this guy up here. And then same thing, stid, and then this is not that, it's element ref. And then this is stid. And basically all we ever do, this will probably fail most linters. Most linters would probably be like, you can't just like do that. But I don't really, at this point, I can't really visualize what the fail is, what the fail state is. I guess if we don't get a renderer or an st renderer, it should be false. So it's like if like this, render and st renderer. So if both of those come back as true, then we'll set success to true. And see, we're going to be able to unit test that, which is pretty cool. You know, like I feel like that's actually a huge improvement. So that's probably another win for unit tests. I'm not fully convinced that in an actual real life job where you actually have to get things done for production, if unit testing is worth, if the juice is worth the squeeze. I guess it just totally depends on your domain and your situation, and the risk reward, and all of that stuff, all of those fancy words. So anyways, we're back over here now. And I don't know why, but it's like complaining about something I did here. So what I'm going to do, well, first we're going to just do this. Oh, what is the name? So I came over here looking for this name, and then I did not want to copy. Should I name that component visualization service? Yeah, I think I should name this component visualization service. I would imagine this breaks my spec. I don't think there's really a good, I don't think it's necessary to rename all the files, because you know it's in the components directory. So I think that is reasonable to do that. But I think I like that. I don't think it would have been necessary if I had named this 3, but I do think it is useful component. Now I know that this is a component specific visualization service. And I think there's a way that you can even tell it um, to make this, like, this really shouldn't be a shared component. But it doesn't matter because it's just utilities. Um, so the thing you have to think about is like, okay, what's going to happen when I have 10 of these on there, which right now I have 6 of them, and they're all sharing this same one. And I guess that's a good thing because, like, from a memory perspective, because yeah, if I had 100,000 of these on the screen, I don't want to have 100,000 different instances because literally, um, it's just the same function. So we would end up having like 100,000 separate instances of this render native element when really why do we need this? Literally it's just a utility function that knows how to get the right to knows how to write all this stuff. So like it's way more efficient to leave this as a singleton. So that's a good thing. Um, Now, if we ever said, "Oh, I'm going to add some sort of," and this is where a lot of Angular developers will get themselves in trouble with services, is like, let's say you decide, "Oh, I'm going to create a state variable or a component variable." So state service stid, right? Let's say you're going to do that, and it's a number, and you're like, "Okay, I want to," or undefined. And you're like, okay, and now I'm gonna keep the state of this. No, the problem is this is a singleton. It's used by all of these. It's just gonna be whatever the std, and then like, yeah, let's say you did this, and you're like, this dot stid equals stid. Like that's literally just gonna be the last one. Whatever the last one that called it is what it's going to be. Every one of them is not going to have their own little version of it, because this is um, a shared resource that they're all sharing, um, which is a lot different than JavaScript in general. So like if you work in vanilla JavaScript, that you have to make that happen, um, but in Angular it just happens that way. And that's why a lot of Angular developers have a heck of a time ever going back to vanilla JavaScript, um, because those little subtle differences are killers. But anyways, this dot, and I do think that it's probably not a good idea to become a um, like if you could all um, if you have any ability to be like do vanilla JavaScript for a while. Um, is that right? I don't think that wasn't the name of it. Why did it give me that name? Why did you do this? Why did you do this to me? IDE render native. Well, I'm glad render in native element. I think that is right. Render in native element. Yeah, I like that name. Didn't like it. It's awkward. Like from a language perspective, it is very awkward. But I do think it's accurate. And oh, because this is a signal, so you have to execute it. Execution. All right, so it looks like everything worked. Let's just double check by breaking everything. Yeah. So I think it's always important to break everything when you think everything worked, because it is possible that like there is like a false positive that it seems like it worked, but it didn't. All right, so now we have um, this in a much more um, unit testable situation. Um, the unit tests are still going to have problems. They may not even pass. I don't know if that. Yeah, I don't. Yeah, we're. It should all pass. I believe they'll all pass. Run test, but I don't think we won't have. I don't think we'll have very much coverage on the visualization service. So we will have a red one. I think it'll be red. It'll be red. We'll get triggered. We'll get triggered from our elementary. We won't get our gold star. So, and then we will be put up in front of the class and humiliated for having our red unchecked, 100% situation. But I do think we will all pass, so we can feel good about that. Yep, we're 100% passing. So, but man, we only got 98.44. 98.44, and our branches are only 92%. And so this is kind of cool. You're like, oh, this is nice. It's cool. And I don't know what the heck that is. That's interesting. Um, but now for our humbling, and it's always good to get humbled so that you can then unhumble yourself. Oh no, 50%. Oh no, we are at 78% on statements of the whole viz component too. That whole folder is that. So let's click in. Uh-oh. 33. Oh, 66. Oh, and then 66 online. So yeah. So let's go look in here. Up in here. All right. Um, so it's interesting that somehow, oh yeah, because when we ran it, but see, when we ran it um from the component, what happened was um it looks like it was able to get a renderer by ID. So I don't know, for some reason renderer by ID sent something back, but it looks like st renderer branch could not be covered. And I don't even know, maybe the renderer wasn't either. But so now we can write code around this to basically create a renderer service, an st renderer service, then call this function with and pass in. I don't know, man. Passing an element ref might be tricky. Um, that actually is going to be tricky, figuring out how to create an element ref for this thing to attach to. Um, I don't. I would imagine it's something that's been done a million times, um, creating an element ref, but yeah, that's going to be tricky. So, anyways, that's 28 minutes. It's kind of long. I got a lot of stuff I want to get done today, so let me activate my camera, see if it's resolved itself. Ooh, yeah, it looks like it's nice and smooth. Yeah, so yeah, tomorrow I guess we'll start trying to write unit tests around this. So like the thing that you have to balance on all this is like if we because I'm evaluating personally on a personal basis the concept of writing unit tests from a professional as a professional. And you like there are people that just straight up like I remember having a conversation with a guy and he's just like, oh, so have you ever worked at a place that has unit tests? And I'm like, yeah, I've worked at places that require 80% plus unit test coverage and things like that. Like you can't check anything in unless you have really good unit test coverage and stuff. And they're like, and he's like, oh, so you know why it's necessary. And it was just like, yeah, I don't know what you're talking about. Um, but he just assumed because I had worked in it that I was a advocate of it. And it's hard. It's hard because I think that we are literally in this effort. We are probably like, if we add it all up, likely spending 30%, maybe 40% of our time writing unit tests. Now, I've worked in places where, like, literally for every hour that you spent writing code that did stuff, you spent like 10 hours writing unit tests. Like literally, no lie. It would take hours and hours and hours and hours and hours to create the unit tests, because like they were just so much more complicated than these unit tests. And then they had built all these structures around, like, oh, when you write a unit test, you reuse this component, reuse that, and then next thing you know, you're you're trying to fix a component, and then that component's breaking 100 other unit tests, and so you just spend, like, we would literally spend 10 times as much time writing unit tests than we would writing, and then we would spend another, like, for every hour of code that we were writing, we were spending like 3 or 4 hours writing end-to-end testing. And so, like, literally in a 40-hour week, you might get to code for 1 hour, and then you spend 39 hours writing supporting code. And, obviously, we didn't get shit done in that place. That place was a complete wreck. And, like, the stress of trying to get even the most basic. That's when I fell in love with CSS, and I would just sign up for any CSS because there's really no unit testing around CSS. There's some linting, but yeah. And then sometimes, like, the linter would force you to do things that would make the unit tests have to be way, like, a lot more unit tests and stuff and all that. And so, I'm very skeptical of the value of these things. And then, so, but I do think that some basic unit testing, especially if you're doing your own thing, right? Like if you're writing your own code and the idea is to spend your time really getting a mastery of whatever you're working on, unit tests are invaluable because it really does make you understand down to the nitty gritty everything. Like we are going to understand element refs better after writing. We're going to understand this thing a lot better after writing a unit test for it. There's no way around it. Like, because we're going to have to create our own element ref in some way and then pass it in. And then that element ref is going to get attached to. And I think when I'm done with that, because of this, but I could see, I've seen other places where when people write unit tests, like they fail and then they go search on Stack Overflow and then they just copy code from Stack Overflow and just paste it in there. And then when it starts passing, they're done. So they don't learn a damn thing in the process, so, I don't know. I don't know, but happy coding, everybody. More unit testing tomorrow. Bye.